So the finale for WandaVision is finally here, and it's bound to disappoint so many people. It proves so many people wrong, including myself, though we must blame Paul Bettany for trolling us all along. See what I did there? Without any further ado, and a spoiler warning, so watch the finale before this. This is my review of the finale of WandaVision. Wanda faces a final showdown against Agatha Harkness while Monica and Jimmy fight to protect her as the series closes and Wanda's illusions begin to unravel. There's so much to unpack in this single finale episode. And before I kick off with my thoughts, the most important part is for you to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So head down there and start the conversation. And while you're heading down there, if you haven't done so yet, why not click the subscribe button? It really helps me. It helps the channel. You'd be just a really sweet person if you did so as well. And if you want to support the channel even more, why not go down there to the description and check out my links for my merch on TeePublic and Redbubble as well. So let's start by addressing my theories, the theories that I had all along, that I posted videos about, that I talked about on certain shows with other people, my friends and whatnot. Wrong, 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 very, very wrong. No Ultron, no Doctor Strange, no Patrick Stewart, no nothing. Everyone that was in this show already was anyone that had any impact on this finale, and so if you're unsatisfied with that, it's natural. Just don't blame the show if your theories didn't come true. So in this episode, I kind of want to go by location, so it feels proper to start outside the Hex, which is the simplest way to go about it. Hayward has launched White Vision, and Jimmy is arrested by him, but he calls on his friends from Quantico because despite being in handcuffs, he knows magic, and he can easily get out of handcuffs. So while he does that and takes over the situation on the outside, Hayward is on his way inside the Hex, which is opening up a little bit, and we'll get to why in a sec, and he has made it inside the Hex with a small team of soldiers ready to take Wanda down, while White Vision has already gone ahead and started a fight with Real Vision? Can we call him that? So going inside the Hex, there's a big fight between Agatha and Wanda, and Agatha seems to constantly have the upper hand. She confronts Wanda about her destiny and who she truly is, the Scarlet Witch, the witch of chaotic magic, and Agatha wants that power. She wants it to herself, she wants to absorb it, she wants Wanda to give that power to her so she can use it wisely and as she sees fit. And as they're confronting each other outside Wanda's house, Wanda throws a car at Agatha, crashes into the house, she thinks she's dead, and White Vision shows up in an extremely tense scene where he goes supposedly to caress, that word is weird, caress Wanda's face and starts to squeeze in, but Vision comes to the rescue, and we see that trailer scene that I thought was going to be Wanda versus actual Vision. But no, it's Vision versus White Vision. One of the coolest fights in this entire episode, in this entire show. I love seeing White Vision versus Vision flying around all through the Hex, up and down, over the clouds, under the clouds, going low density, high density. Just really cool, fun use of the powers that we get from Vision. And as that is going on, of course, Agatha was not dead all along, and her and Wanda make their way into the main square of Westview, and Agatha starts to torture Wanda by snapping people out of their hypnosis. And we get to see Dottie again, and she's no one. And everybody starts getting out of the trance and starts confronting Wanda and blaming her and like surrounding her and putting her like on a siege. People around her blaming her and asking her for mercy and to see their loved ones and whatnot. And Wanda starts to feel this and starts to truly be haunted by what she has been doing to these people, which I told you all along, she knew on some level it was wrong, and so she opens the Hex without realizing what that will do to Vision, and Vision starts to disintegrate, to break apart as Wanda tells people to go, run away, you can leave now. And as she's opening the Hex, she's looking at Vision over there who's disintegrating, but over there it's also her children who are also disintegrating. So again, I was wrong that the kids would make it outside the Hex. So you know what? It is much more effective for Wanda that things are this way. Because emotionally speaking, it's more resonant, it's heavier, it actually has a consequence. If Wanda gets out of this, she loses Vision and the kids, and it doesn't end well for her. That was what this was setting up all along, and I love that that was a price to pay. But for now, Wanda decides to close the hex once again to keep them alive, and so the family unites and the kids take care of Hayward and his men as Wanda goes back to confronting and fighting Agatha Harkness, and Vision goes back to fighting White Vision. And there's a twist on there, because White Vision and Vision start to have this philosophical conversation about who is the real Vision between them. And that speaks volumes when it comes to the writing of the show, that they understand this character and don't just give him a classic comic book fight, which they did beforehand and we have already talked about, and that was awesome. But we can also have this, which truly captures who Vision is. And so they decide that neither of them are Vision, and both of them are Vision. And this new White Vision gets his memories unleashed by our Vision, and basically he watches the entire MCU in like 10 seconds, starting at Age of Ultron. And so he flies away, and we never see him again. Put a pin on that, we'll go back to it. And so the kids take good care of Hayward's men, and Hayward himself, after all this, steps out of the car and starts to shoot at the kids. But Monica, and we'll go back to where she was before she shows up here, she steps in front of the kids and the bullets go through her. She uses her powers for the bullets to go through her, but there's another one that goes past her, and Wiccan just stops it and drops it. And Hayward tries to run away, and boom, Darcy clashes against him and says, "Have fun in prison," which is one of the best lines in this entire episode. I absolutely love it. So before going into the final fight between Wanda and Agatha, let's talk about Monica. She was trapped in this attic with Pietro, and she was looking around trying to escape, but he still had the speed, and so she finds his identity, and he is Ralph. His name is Ralph Boner. Okay, and so Monica finds out how he's being controlled. He was with this necklace, and he just says, "Oh, please, spare my life." And so after that, we just see Monica protecting the kids when she arrives at the main square. Going back to the main event, though, Agatha Harkness versus Wanda. Oh, this is my favorite part of the episode, guys. They're fighting in the sky, and Agatha wants Wanda's power. That's all she wants, so Wanda just starts giving it to her, throwing shots at her, failing in a few there, throwing, and as Agatha feels all-powerful, she goes to destroy Wanda and nothing works. And around on the hex that has just recently been rebuilt in a few scenes prior, we see runes. And as Agatha explained in last week's episode, when a rune is cast, only the witch who cast it can do spells. And Wanda takes her entire power back, and we have the debut, the birth, the reincarnation, whatever you want to call it, of the Scarlet Witch in such an awesome costume, such a beautiful, incredible interpretation and adaptation of the comics costume. It looks badass, it looks sexy, it looks amazing, it looks all the positive compliments I can think of. I love this look, I love this moment, I love this birth. All along, this, my friends, was a villain origin story for the Scarlet Witch. And so she takes Agatha down, and what she decides to do with her is that you're going to live in this hypnosis. You're going to be the nosy neighbor for real, here, trapped in Westview. And when Agatha says Wanda's going to need her, she says, "Oh, I'll know where to find you." And this is the ability of Elizabeth Olsen to change her emotional range just like that. Whenever she has to deliver a killer line, she delivers a killer line. She said this here, she says the "you will" on Endgame. It's amazing. I'm talking about like the events of the story, but the acting throughout all of this from Kathryn Hahn, Paul Bettany, the kids, Teyonah, Parris, and Elizabeth Olsen, just all around amazing. Now, before we move on to what happens next, I do need to bring up a few things that happened prior to this that I forgot, and that is the Darkhold is mentioned, and it's confirmed that that book that Agatha had in her basement is the Darkhold. There's an entire chapter dedicated to it about the Scarlet Witch. Put a pin on that again. We'll get to it when we talk about the post-credit scenes. There's 2 post-credit scenes. And it is also briefly mentioned that the Scarlet Witch's power surpasses that of the Sorcerer Supreme. So there's our connection to the 3rd chapter in this big movie/show story arc that expands WandaVision, Spider-Man 3, and Doctor Strange 2. And so after this confrontation, after setting everybody free of the trans, after taking care of Hayward, his men, and Agatha, Wanda, the kids, and Vision go back home. They are a happy family for one last time because unfortunately it's time to say goodbye. Wanda has decided to let this go. And it's one of the most beautiful, heartwarming, and heartbreaking, tension-filled scenes as you're just counting down to the inevitable. It's really sweet, it's really emotional, but there's this constant sense of dread as Vision and Wanda are stuck the kids in before going to the living room and saying goodbye to each other as the hex is kind of diminishing and coming closer and closer to where they are because Wanda is the center of the hex. And so they have this beautiful conversation about how it's bad luck to say goodbye in the dark, and it's Vision being Vision, and I love Paul Bettany handling these moments. He just handles them with such grace and sensibility. It's so well done. And they talk about how they've said goodbye before. Maybe they'll say hello again. And in this one, I was right, and I'm glad I was right. I'm glad Vision is gone. They leave that option open, at least when it comes to a story. Maybe there's a way Wanda could bring him back. That's maybe what she's exploring in the post-credit scene, and we'll get to it. But indeed, we say goodbye to the kids. We say goodbye to Vision, we say goodbye to the house, and Wanda goes back to her regular garb when she exploded out, what we saw in last week's episode, and the house is not there anymore, just the plot of land that she has to build a house, and she goes away. She goes back on foot, she doesn't even take her car, she goes back to her costume as she flies away out of Westview, looking back one last time to say goodbye, flying away, close to credits. Let's talk about the post-credit scenes because the FBI and everything is putting everything in order back in Westview, and Monica gets called back into the theater because there's someone who wants to see her, and this person who said that somebody wants to see her in the theater, there's nobody there, so this person reveals herself to be a Skrull, and I believe this to be Talos's daughter. Not the wife, but the daughter. I have no reason to think this, it just feels right that the person who was a kid as a Skrull back in the 90s would now be friends with the other person that was a kid back in the 90s, and they've known about each other for a long time. So I think that makes the most sense. And she says that this person that wants to talk to Monica is a friend of her mother's, an old friend, and wants to talk to Monica up there. In space. In space! So let's talk about what matters, the final post-credit scene. We have this beautiful tracking shot going in to this very desolated area near some mountains, an old house in the middle of nowhere that's very reminiscent to what you would think you would see in an Incredible Hulk movie, like when he's trying to isolate himself. But we see Wanda. She's like in sweatpants, in a jacket, having a tea. Everything seems normal. Until the tracking shot, beautiful tracking shot by the way, there's another one in the middle of the episode in the main square as everything is opening up, and it's freaking awesome. But so we have this tracking shot continues inside the house, turns to the right, and there is the Scarlet Witch studying the Darkhold, and some way, somehow we hear the voices of her kids calling to her. She's trying to find a way that she can bring her kids back. This is the Scarlet Witch taking over Wanda. This is her villainous side, her antagonistic side, her evil side coming out and taking over. Not exactly the way I would have predicted it, but it's very much, to me, that's how I read it at least, it's very much a confirmation that she's going to be on the bad side when it comes to Doctor Strange, and she's probably gonna be being chased by Mordo throughout so that he can kill her because she's a witch, she's a sorceress. And Doctor Strange as well is going to try and get her to save her, not destroy her. And also pretty much confirms that the Darkhold is that book that was missing in the first Doctor Strange film. So after all this, what are my overall thoughts on WandaVision? I think this show, with its flaws, and I do have flaws, concluded with it being what it was always meant to be. This is a story of love, but it's more importantly a tragedy. A tragedy about love and grief and how a woman is trying to deal with it, is trying to deal with everything she lost, because all the big events of her life deal with loss. Avengers Age of Ultron loses her brother. Avengers Infinity War loses Vision, and she's got no one. She is all alone. And I love how this show tells this beautiful, heartbreaking story and holds no bars. Wanda does not end in a good place, like I and so many others predicted, and that's the right way to end this, because it's not easy to deal with grief. There's no satisfying comeback from it. It's just a bad way to end things, and they did it. They let Wanda end in bad terms and let her be desperate. I think this show dealt with its characters beautifully, their arcs as well. It's a beautiful horror tragedy show that mixes all these tones and storylines and does it so beautifully. It deals with heartbreak and love and all the wiki wacky comic book stuff that I love as well, and it mixes them so freaking well. It lends to the gravitas of what is really going on here. Not to mention that there aren't flaws. I think the show spent way too much time talking about Ultron when it didn't matter to the story. I think the show spent way too much time referencing things that didn't have a proper payoff, like Ralph was the guy who's playing Quicksilver all along. The aerospace engineer, we never saw him. It was nobody. It just felt like people got in the way of the show and started interacting with the fans to troll them, and that gets in the way of your story. I gotta say, Hayward being nobody and just being like Hayward and he's a bad guy, the acting on that, sir, is not very good, my friends. I think WandaVision has its flaws and it set up things to be way more important than they turned out to be. It did things that didn't matter to the show, so they should have just written them out. But what it focuses on for real, it does satisfy in those regards. Satisfies when it comes to the characters, when it comes to its themes of grief and the 5 stages and love and heartbreak and how to move on. I think it handles the character of Wanda beautifully and takes her to the next level, because what we didn't realize up until last week's episode was that this was her origin story. Her origin story as a villain. I'm giving WandaVision a B+. Now, my beautiful geekies, what did you think of the WandaVision show, of the WandaVision finale? Let me know how you rank the episodes and all of that in the comments below. Are you excited for Spider-Man 3, for Doctor Strange 2? All of that in the comments below. And while you're heading down there, why not click the subscribe button if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet? It would really help me, really help the channel, and you will unleash your Scarlet Witch powers as well. Thank you so much once more for watching. Stay tuned for my review of Raya and the Last Dragon. I hope to see you there, and so until then, love each other and love the movies.